What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, Sony dropped a massive announcement online that they would be acquiring Bungie, and this surprised everyone. A lot of details were coming out throughout the last 24 hours, and I figured we'd go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a big game that we were expecting to be announced, but it has now been confirmed, and this would be Sony moving one of their bigger titles over to the Switch. And we're also going to be talking about Square Enix and their plans for 2022 that apparently include Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with a state of play that's now scheduled for this week. It's for one title, though, and that's Gran Turismo 7. We can see this posted up over on PlayStation blog where they say a special Gran Turismo 7 edition of State of Play arrives this Wednesday. That'll be kicking off 2 p.m. Pacific time. It'll be just over 30 minutes of new PS5 footage and gameplay details for Gran Turismo 7. They'll be airing it on Twitch and YouTube. And I feel like it's obvious because they're very straightforward about this for a lot of their state of plays as to what will and what won't be there. It's just going to be Gran Turismo 7. I know people hold out hope for like a one more thing and all of a sudden they're going to have the Bloodborne patch there or something. No, it's just going to be Gran Turismo 7. I am curious, though, if they would talk about a VR mode, maybe for Gran Turismo 7 to go along with PlayStation VR 2 that we're expecting to come out towards the end of this year. But either way, it's felt like an eternity since Gran Turismo 6. I know we had Sport, but I don't know, I just didn't like Sport as much. It's going to be really cool to see a new numbered game in the series here. Everything they've shown so far looks great, so looking forward to about 30 minutes of Gran Turismo 7 tomorrow. Also, it looks like Nintendo is at it again with the copyright strike hammer, this time for soundtracks that were listed on YouTube. We can see this tweet posted up by Gilva Sunner saying over 1,300 copyright blocks on the YouTube channel today. And they also list all of the soundtracks Nintendo has blocked this time, which includes takedown notices and blocks for Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Super Smash Bros., Yoshi's Island. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and we even had some soundtracks in there from Luigi's Mansion. Now, Gilva Sunner is pretty clear that they expect this to happen and it's within Nintendo's rights. Obviously, they do this. It's their IPs, it's their music. If they don't want it online or on a particular channel, they can take it down. It wasn't monetized or anything on Gilva's channel. It was mostly for preservation and just having it available, which is the biggest thing now, is this stuff isn't exactly listed up consistently by Nintendo at all. So it would be nice if they had like a full Spotify channel where they listed a lot of this music or their own YouTube channel, because otherwise, yeah, it comes down to people like ripping the music at times and posting it up like Gilva was here. It's not surprising to see this. It's just a shame, really. Oh, and speaking of Bloodborne, I had mentioned before that there was a Demake project that was in the works, and it looks like now it has officially released. You can see this page, this being the Bloodborne PSX Demake, and yeah, it's exactly that. It's if you had Bloodborne and you could imagine how it would look on the original PlayStation. You can download it now, play it on your PC. It's not for the original PlayStation. I think they mentioned maybe plans for it, but as far as I can tell, this is like kind of the first bit of the game just looking like an original PlayStation game. It's really cool to see a brand new title, or a newer title, I shouldn't say brand new, but a newer title that you can then reimagine and kind of put that nostalgic flair on as to what it would look like if you picked it up maybe at a Blockbuster or a Hollywood Video one Friday to rent for the weekend. It's worth checking out. You can download it now on your PC and see what Bloodborne will look like on the old 32-bit PlayStation. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the big announcement from yesterday, that being that Sony is officially buying Bungie. Now, the amount that's been reported is $3.6 billion. Didn't see anything about if it's all cash or if there's like stock and cash. Sometimes there's a mixture of the two. However, the amount $3.6 billion, a bit less than the Activision Blizzard one that we saw previously from Microsoft, but still, this is a big deal. Remember, Bungie was the one developing Halo for Microsoft back on the Xbox and the Xbox 360. So we'll head over here to the PlayStation blog where they post the announcement. Bungie is joining PlayStation. Legendary developer joined PlayStation as independent multi-platform studio and publisher. This from Jim Ryan saying, first off, I want to be very clear to the community that Bungie will remain an independent and multi-platform studio and publisher. As such, we believe it makes sense for it to sit alongside the PlayStation Studios organization. We are incredibly excited about the opportunities for synergies and collaboration between these two world-class groups. He goes on to say Bungie's world-class expertise in multi-platform development and live game services will help us deliver on our vision of expanding PlayStation to hundreds of millions of gamers. Bungie is a great innovator and has developed incredible proprietary tools that will help PlayStation Studios achieve new heights under Herman Hulst's leadership. So the purchase of Bungie, while it does seem that they're going to remain independent, it obviously appears to be something that Sony is thinking about for the long term and solving one of their bigger weaknesses. That comes down to them being able to develop a live service game that they can continue running maybe multiple generations. Live service games, we know, are very lucrative. Like, you build it and then you continue to build on top of that, and it continues to bring you recurring revenue as you go along. It's something that Bungie's been able to do very well with Destiny 2. That's a game that I still see a lot of people talk about, mention playing, and getting really into different cosmetics and other parts of that game that come down to microtransactions. But the fact that Bungie has been able to keep that game, or players in that game, so engaged is pretty impressive, and I'm sure Sony noticed that. Now, Bungie does have other projects that they're working on. There was a new IP that they had funding from NetEase to develop, so it sounds like that will still be independent with Bungie. And I mean, if you look at it from Sony's perspective, they'll have a turnkey live service game immediately with Destiny 2, but they'll also have the proprietary tools and knowledge that Bungie has accrued over several years of just releasing these games. So maybe if they want to take a shot at an IP that's been on the back burner for a while as a live service, like a Killzone or a Resistance or a SOCOM, well, they'll have plenty of developers, over 800 last I checked with Bungie, that know what they're doing. Now, there was also a really good interview that was done over on gamesindustry.biz, but their website got crushed with traffic and wouldn't load. However, Christopher Dring, who had the interview, did post up some parts on Twitter to make it, well, viewable at this point, but we can see this here. The motivation behind Sony's acquisition of Bungie is to help boost their own abilities to make live service multi-platform games. Equally, Sony unlocks the potential to Bungie to strengthen its technical capabilities and the prospect of taking its games to movies and TV. The deal was in the works for the past 5 to 6 months. It's not a reaction to the Take-Two, Zynga, or Microsoft Activision deals. And Jim Ryan told me we should expect more when it comes to further PlayStation acquisition. So a few things here. Obviously, this isn't something that came together in the past couple of weeks to then answer back to what Microsoft did with Activision acquisition. These deals take a while, 5 to 6 months for this one. And there was an image that was posted up, I believe by Herman Hulst, just showing them kind of meeting last year about this. So yeah, not them going, oh, Microsoft got Activision, we better go lock up Destiny 2 right now, and they made it happen in a couple of weeks. They've been thinking about this for a while, and really, I've been hearing that Bungie even approached other companies a while ago about being purchased, even like Microsoft. So maybe to them, hey, $3.6 billion for what we'd be getting from Bungie, not necessarily worth it, because Microsoft doesn't have an issue necessarily with multiplayer games. They have more of an issue with what Sony's really good at: high quality, narrative-driven, single-player experiences. Also, the movies and TV side of things, it makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think of that originally, but yeah, like they could expand Destiny to the big screen if they want, or to a full series on a streaming platform or something with Sony's help and backing there. So that would obviously work to boost the value of the IP with Destiny and Bungie. And I do think there would be a lot of collaboration back and forth between the different studios, because we've heard that's what goes on at Sony. If a project is having a hard time, you might have one studio come over to help the other, and they'll just talk back and forth when it comes to the technical side of things. So I think this will benefit Sony heavily when it comes to them trying to make that big flagship live service game, and Bungie when it comes to strengthening their own IPs like Destiny. Also, that last line from Jim Ryan about expecting more acquisitions is pretty ominous, isn't it? I know we keep talking about the consolidation of just gaming companies in general right now, with big publishers like Activision Blizzard even getting absorbed into Microsoft. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we see something not quite on the scale of Activision Blizzard, but even, I guess, bigger than what we saw here with Bungie, especially when it comes to like the purchase price of $3.6 billion. I've been seeing some people mention that, yeah, there's probably going to be another big acquisition coming here in the near future is what I'll say. I know Jeff Grubb mentioned on his show pretty recently and others, so we'll keep an eye out. But my question, though, is, can Microsoft really make another big move with them already kind of under the magnifying glass with this Activision Blizzard thing? Or is this just Sony like, hey, we're going to go out and take a look around at some other studios? I see people mention Square. I don't really know if Square wants to be purchased now, but I mean, I say get Konami because, like, they're not doing anything now anyway, and I feel like there's a lot of potential with their IPs like Metal Gear Solid or Contra and so on there. So there we have it. Sony buying Bungie. I did not see that one coming. Next up, let's talk about MLB The Show 22. It was announced yesterday. We can see this tweet here from MLB The Show saying, pre-order MLB The Show 22 available on April 5th. PS5, PS4, Xbox Series XS, Xbox One, and for the first time ever, Nintendo Switch. That's right. You will see this game available on the Switch. The whole PlayStation logo will pop up on your system. That'll be certainly interesting to see there. I had also seen some news that there will be a required download for this, which doesn't surprise me. I'm sure we'll be getting more information on that as we head towards release there. So just expect the nice blue banner on the front of the box for the Switch. But it's good to see a simulation baseball game heading to the Switch. That's something that the system has been missing, and well, good to see it's MLB The Show because that is a high quality experience there for baseball fans. Now, we also had some other news when it comes to this game, and it being available on Game Pass day one for the second year in a row, and I kind of think this is something that Xbox is just going to keep going. They say MLB The Show launches day one with Xbox Game Pass on April 5th. Now, they also say we'll have cross-platform play, cross-saves, and cross-progression for the Switch, which is kind of cool, though. If you're like an MLB The Show fan, the fact that you could take your game on the go with you there using the Switch, and then you get home and you want to transfer it back over to your PS5 or your Xbox Series X setup there to play on the big screen, that's not a bad idea to have that option. Now, obviously, you'd be buying it on the Switch, and I guess technically downloading on Game Pass day one if you have Game Pass. I do like these yearly sports titles on a service like Game Pass because we know they depreciate in value super fast to where you'll turn around and be like, oh, now it's $10. I just bought the game like 3 months ago or something. So that, I think, is a great use case for these subscription services, and I would like to see more and more of these sports titles head to something like Game Pass day one, like a Madden or any of the NBA games, anything like that, because yeah, it would technically make it easier for you to keep up every single year and not wait months for the thing to fall to like $20. But either way, good to see MLB The Show finally making its way to the Nintendo Switch. We heard about it when they first made the announcement that the game was going multi-platform. We said to wait an extra year, but make sure you check that one out at the beginning of April on pretty much everything at this point. Next up, let's talk about Final Fantasy VII. Specifically though, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Now, on January 31st, Final Fantasy VII turned 25 years old. There's an entire anniversary going on throughout this year for the game, which exploded into its own series. Very, very popular when it came out on the original PlayStation, and for a lot of people, that was like their first look at like a JRPG, especially in the US here where it went mainstream. But still, looking back on it, it's hard to believe it's already been 25 years. But we can see this over on VGC, where they say Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 is planned for reveal this year. This confirmed by the producer. Now, this was according to Final Fantasy VII's original director, as translated by Push Dustin, saying, "We are hard at work on Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, so please look forward to that." In addition, with regards to the long-awaited Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, there will be more information this year if we can. So, I mean, we've seen that there are issues in development for Final Fantasy XVI as they had to do a lot of remote work and it slowed things down. pretty heavily by about 6 months, but they appear to be on track to reveal more information around that game in the spring. So in a couple of months here, we do know that Final Fantasy Stranger Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, will be releasing next month. We're going to see Forspoken come out, the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, and then probably leading into Final Fantasy 16 releasing maybe at the end of this year, otherwise early 2023. Basically, once they get that done and dated, I think we could see some sort of tease or trailer for Final Fantasy VII Remake by the end of this year. Maybe it was something they were considering to have ready for E3, and now it's kind of just like, well, there's no E3, so anytime. Could be Summer Games Fest. Maybe they save it for a State of Play, since, let's face it, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 will most likely be an exclusive for PlayStation. It seems like Sony is completely on board with funding this thing and, well, keeping it as a timed exclusive. Maybe they'll also release it on PC day one. But exciting stuff to at least hear them mention Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, because there are a lot of people thinking it's going to be 3 or 4 years even from now before we see it, based on how long it took to create Part 1. But they had mentioned that Part 2 won't take as long to develop because they already have a lot of assets that they'll, of course, be reusing for the sequel. So exciting stuff. Here's hoping we get a look at it sooner rather than later. In our last bit of news, let's talk about the world of NFTs once again. I mentioned this is probably not going to go away, and you're going to see more and more companies in gaming just announce something, whether it's digital artwork or attempt to integrate it into their games somehow, or just an entire pay-to-earn or play-to-earn game. Well, it looks like now Team 17 is taking a shot at this. We can see this posted up by GamesIndustry.biz saying Team 17 is set to launch a series of limited edition NFT collectibles based on the long-running Worm series, and I'm sure you can imagine the reaction they got online. It wasn't great. A lot of backlash hit them immediately online, especially on Twitter, and it didn't get much better when more information started to come out, especially from, well, people who work at Team 17. We can see this from Eurogamer. Many staff not told of NFT project before announced today, that according to Eurogamer. And it appears that Team 17 is partnering with Reality Gaming Group. They had their own press release that was posted up, so it seems that Team 17 is locked into this, and they're going to take a shot at this whole thing with, I guess, digital artwork and NFTs. But they did have a response here to Eurogamer saying they are licensing the Worms brand to our newest third-party partner so they can produce collectible digital artwork based on one of the most beloved IPs in indie games, in a similar way to already available physical merchandise. Team 17 has no plans to introduce NFTs or play-to-earn NFT mechanics into any of its indie games labeled titles. So I have to imagine these companies, they see the backlash. And I mean, some of them reverse course. We saw that with the Stalker developers. They decided, well, we're not going to do this because we actually need the game to sell, and we're like putting NFTs into the game itself. This is kind of like separate from the game, but still the brand itself. And I guess they're looking at it and saying, well, let's measure this out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially, and then just backlash online. And I guess it keeps coming up, hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. I mean, Konami, yes, it made over $100,000 from Castlevania images and animation. I mean, it's basically nothing, right? It's money they just found under their couch cushion. But you get to a point, I would assume, where you're like, wow, they really don't like this. Gamers online, maybe we should back off this, but Team 17 appears to be locked in. I just don't know if it's necessarily worth the short-term gain versus the potential long-term damage to your brand or company. Maybe they're figuring, hey, they'll get bored and move on, because, I mean, to be real, a lot of people kind of do that, but I don't know. It seems short-sighted to me, at least right now. Let Square or Ubisoft or someone keep getting beaten down and see if maybe eventually they break through somehow. Before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, which large acquisition do you think is the better deal overall? 79% said Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion, and then 21% said Sony buying Bungie for $3.6 billion. I did look at that purchase of Bungie, and it does feel like that's a lot of money for Bungie. But I do believe Sony's looking at this in the long term and realizing that it's not just Destiny 2 and Bungie, it's the accumulated knowledge that they have with a very large development studio, like I said, over 800 people who understand how to make a big live service title. And that, I think, is Sony's vision right now, is to be able to reach hundreds of millions of gamers potentially. And yeah, maybe they launch a big new title that's live service and it's on PC and PlayStation day one, and they have Bungie help them out to get that launched and put out there. So that, I think, is where we are now. It just was worth more to them for really a weakness in their division, and that being the multiplayer side. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Alex saying, when making NFTs, you can specify that the creator of the token perpetually gets a portion of all resales, which means that companies like Ubisoft can sell a cosmetic item and make additional money every time someone sells it again. They don't want to do that for the digital games because they can make a lot more selling a digital game on sale than they could on a portion of a resale. So I did not know this about NFTs, and I've been trying to look into them more because it just keeps coming up in the news, and like I'm trying to understand this so I can at least talk a bit more about them as they come up here in these shows. But like, I did not know that you could technically like program a contract or just code so that if somebody sells an NFT, like, and you're the original creator, you get a cut of that. Because that makes sense now. That's like an aha moment for me as to why Ubisoft is doing this. Because if you look at what they're doing with Quartz, they're just giving these items out if you've accomplished certain things in a game. And like one of them was like some 100-hour milestone in Ghost Recon. And I'm like, well, you know what? They might have earned that one. But if you just give them to the player with artificial scarcity being introduced and you just let them decide for themselves how much it's worth. And oh, wow, look at that. It's worth $5,000 or $6,000. Well, I mean, I guess we'll take our 2%, 3% cut off the top from this sale and that sale. And all of a sudden, it starts adding up, potentially, if this is a world that Ubisoft is envisioning, to millions of dollars a day. And they don't actually set the prices. They're just collecting the fees that they've then programmed into those NFTs. I think Ubisoft is really looking forward to some future like that. So we'll see if they can make that happen because they seem dead set on this NFT thing right now. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Sony buying Bungie? What do you think their plans are here for that? Are they going to create a brand new IP for a live service or go back and grab a Killzone or maybe a Resistance? Then also, what about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2? Do you think we see it this year, or is this something we might find out more about in 2023? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.